Hello and welcome to KoshienCast, the weekly sports anime fan podcast. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
Hey.
Alright, so Matt, we are reviewing Long Riders, and let me tell you, it has been a long time coming. This show premiered in the fall season last year, and it aired its first 10 episodes, but then production delays meant that they weren't able to release the last two until February. So we've been waiting with bated breath to finally give a cumulative summary of this very special show.
Yeah, so for this show was kind of our dark horse for last season. We didn't really know what at all to expect from it.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched the first episode and we both came out with actually two very different opinions. I did not like it in the least.
And unfortunately, I did.
Right, and unfortunately, I was the one who turned out to be right in the end about that.
Yeah, I had to take back a lot of my words. I was very high on Long Riders at first because it seemed like it was going to just be a fun show about people discovering the joy of doing something new. It turned out to be more focused on the joy of having terrible production values and a threadbare / non-existent plot.
Right.
And a desperate attempt to sell merch for a show that did not deserve to be created in the first place.
I don't even know how much merch we're even going to be getting. But anyway, why don't you just describe the show real quick before we move on with that?
Yeah. So the premise is that it's all about a group of female college students. The main character is a girl named Amy, who she discovers the joy of cycling. So one of her best friends is named Aoi, who is a cyclist, and Amy decides she wants to cycle with her. She ends up getting a bike, and over the course of the show, they start riding with other students from their college named Hinako and Yayoi and Saki. And the five of them together form their own personal team and decide to work together to get better at cycling and compete in multi-day events called flèches, or single-person multi-day events called brevets. And the show sort of concludes with Amy becoming a capable cyclist through the mentorship of all of her teammates.
Right. And that's pretty much the show. And honestly, we derived as much plot from that as we could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not that straightforward in the show either, because a lot of the episodes are completely all over the place. They don't really add anything to the characterization. The most infamous example is at one point Amy gets hung up on how much different parts cost for her bike, so she gets a second job at a maid cafe, and you spend the entire episode watching her at a maid cafe being like uncomfortable and introducing other random characters who never show up again.
Right. For example, we have her boss there who, it's kind of it's a slightly amusing gag that, that the reason why she likes having Amy there is because she's so clumsy. And even though she's breaking everything, she's actually drawing in a lot of customers because she's fulfilling the clumsy maid trope. Which is, it's a little funny, but I'm really making that a lot more interesting than what it actually is.
Yeah, so they have this tendency in this show to introduce characters and themes and then drop them immediately for no apparent reason. The elephant in the room is just the production values, because like I said at the top, they were only able to produce 10 episodes in the fall season when they were supposed to do 12. And the station they were airing them on said that, hey, I know you didn't finish the show, but we don't have time for you to air the last two until February. So they had to wait 2 months after the end of the show in order to actually air the final 2 episodes. So their production was an absolute disaster. It's one of those things where you imagine the story of how Long Riders got made is way more interesting than the story of Long Riders.
Well, because I think what they were attempting to do, considering how cheaply this show was made, I wouldn't be shocked if this was just a hurried attempt to cash in on the popularity of Bakuwan, which neither one of us has watched.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, I had talked with a friend of mine or two who had told me, it's like, yeah, this series is basically a worse version of Bakuwan. It's the same basic premise where you have a bunch of girls who get together, riding bikes, though in that case it's motorcycles, and, just sort of having, tete-a-tetes.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of relaxing conversations, some goofy moments, etc. And it seems like Long Riders was somewhat of a cynical attempt to sort of very quickly cash in on that. Because, because that came out at the beginning of last year, and this made it for the fall season.
Yeah. So it was like 9 months after Bakuwan started airing.
Right, and what it seems like is that they wanted to, especially because animation works a little bit differently in Japan, because there it is a bit more of a weekly cycle. Rather, there's not a whole lot of there is pre-production, but it's a lot more of a hurried pace. You get episodes in as they're supposed to air a lot of times. And so that's why I can't help but imagine. I don't have any proof about that, so I'm not going to act like I'm a source here. But that's what it kind of feels like to me.
Yeah, so other than riding bikes can be cool and plots are for nerds, what sort of themes, if any, do you think Long Riders was trying to communicate, and do you think it communicated them effectively?
No. I pass.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm half joking here. This is a show where effectively nothing happens. Yeah. This is a show where you get a section where the girls get together and they talk about riding a bike, or what type of ride they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Then they get together and they do it.
Yeah, and it's hard for Amy, and she says it's hard to ride this bike, and they say, but you should keep doing it, and then she does, and then everyone tells her you did well, and she says, I feel proud for having ridden my bike well.
Right, and this is a cycle that happens over and over again.
A cycle?
Yeah, I guess the whole idea is that Amy is a lot better at this than she gives herself credit for. It's about boosting her self-confidence, I guess. Because she constantly undermines how well she can actually ride the bike, or, whether or not she can do it or not. But, through the help of her friends, she can see, no, I'm actually a lot better at this than I realize. A strong will can accomplish anything. Except, I don't know. It rings very hollow in this series. And I think part of the problem is that we don't really get a good sense of the core connection between these characters. Because, again, so Amy and Aoi, who is kind of the one... Aoi is kind of the one who originally gets Amy into cycling. Because, they've just been friends all their lives. Do you even remember how Amy met Yayoi and Hinako? They just kind of run into each other.
Yeah, they ran into him while they were biking.
And that's pretty much it. I don't understand what the relationship of these girls does for one another beyond let's go ride bikes. And they try and make it seem like they do have this very strong bond. But again, it's one of those things where they have to keep telling you that. There was one scene where I liked, where they kind of conveyed Amy's loneliness. This is the only part of the series I think is even slightly memorable, because it's the only part I remember. And it's where she is... she goes out for a ride on her own because nobody else can go with her. And she's sitting there kind of lonely. She's looking at her phone, and she takes a picture of her ice cream. And, she's just kind of sitting there, and then she gets an email, and she quickly checks her phone because she thinks she got a response, and she's kind of let down by the fact that it's an email. I think that did a decent job conveying the loneliness. Mm-hmm. As opposed, it did a decent job of conveying what it's like to be separated from the group, as opposed to, it conveyed why it's important for Amy to be with this group because she's bored. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what I got. And I mean, that's not really a compelling reason to watch these characters interact. Not only that, but these characters just sort of fall into the same tropes that we see over and over again in so many different anime. Like Amy's, the cute, clumsy girl who's very shy, but she really wants to try hard for everybody's sake. You have Aoi, who's kind of the big sister character. She kind of looks over, like she's overly protective of Amy. You have Hinako, who's kind of the small Spitfire character. And then you have Yo-Yoi, who's kind of the curvaceous, kind of separated from everybody. These are not interesting characters. They don't do anything with these characters to make them anything more beyond their normal trope.
Yeah, it kind of fails to do anything but serve as a vehicle. This is sort of yeah. This is capitalized in, I think, episode 9 or 10. It's hard to remember since it was several months ago at this point.
Yeah.
When they are going for the Azumi Autumn ride, and they go to the hotel beforehand, and they all go to a spa, and they sit around naked and talk about each other's boobs, and you get a bunch of close-ups on their boobs, and you're like, oh, I didn't think this was this kind of show.
Right.
It felt like they were realizing what a disaster their production was turning into, and they knew the only way they were going to scrape any profit out of it is to accentuate their sexy
Character
like
design.
mostly Yayoi,
Right.
and justify some fan merch.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, I just did a quick search on one of the sites I tend to go to, and I don't even see any merch for the series. And I mean, I think you're right. I think that was their intent, but again, I don't think anybody cares about the series.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, at the very maybe you can find some in Japan, actually around, but no import site is going to carry long riders of stuff, especially when there's Yuri on Ice to profit off of.
Right, of course.
But and that's kind of the problem. It feels very indecisive about what it wants to do. Does it want to be does it actually want to tell kind of this sort of heartfelt story of these girls getting together? Does it want to just be sort of this outlandish fan servicey show? It doesn't know, and it feels like this production didn't really have any direction to it whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think I don't even know what I think. They do a lot of talking about the things that they are going to do.
Right.
A great example of this is with the brevets and the fleshes. It's kind of a plot point that they bring up early on in the show, where it seems like that they have a direction that they're going in. It's okay, so they're establishing the brevets and fleshes now because they're going to get to a point where they're going to ride a brevet or a flesh.
Nope.
No, doesn't really ever happen. At the very end of the show, they are still talking about going to go ride a brevet or a flesh one day. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you kind of set up that goal at the beginning, and you never really got anywhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you guys did the autumn ride, which was close to being a brevet, I guess, but it feels like they maybe had a little something in mind when they started. It felt at the very least that this was a direction that the show could take, where it's these girls are maybe just sort of doing this for fun at first, and then they could crack down once they decide, okay, so by this time we're gonna work on writing we're gonna make sure that we're good enough to be a flesh, to write a brevet. Okay, great. So we could see them train to go, we could see them train more to do this. We could go a little bit more in detail about the type of writing that they're going to have to look into, the type of cycle, what type of bike would be best for this, what the route is going to be, and we could do a lot with that. But again, the series doesn't really seem terribly concerned about it. It's a little bit more concerned about I don't know, sitting around and discussing their new uniforms that they're going to ride. Like, wear and ride.
Yeah. One plot point I want to bring up briefly that just was sort of proof of how this show does not exist within reality.
Right.
Is that so Amy's first purchase, actually, she didn't get a normal, like a road racer bike.
Right.
The first bike she got was a pocket bike, or like it's a folding bicycle. That because she just wanted it to commute back and forth to college, which makes sense. That's sort of what these tiny transportable bicycles are for. But she started doing long rides with Aoi using this folding bicycle.
Right.
And she was trying to like ride up hills and do genuine long distance rides on what is effectively a child's toy. And it took several episodes for someone to say, like, the tires on a folding bike are way smaller and it's not designed for racing, so you're going to have a difficult time using it for that. And she was just like shocked and confused by that. Like, she's such a stupid character in her makeup that she has to be told that in order to do road races, you need road racing bikes. And that,
right.
Like tiny bicycles with little wheels are not that efficient at movement. Like stuff that you would just know intuitively by seeing the two bikes next to each other. She needs to be told in explicit terms.
Right. And it's kind of interesting, too, that you bring up her original bike, because that seems like it was something that was designed to sell merch, because it even had it's a cute, tiny little bike that suits Amy's cute little personality, and she even gives it a cute nickname, like a Pontoon.
Yeah.
Like her bike that she considers her friend and that she's always going to ride.
Yeah.
And it, like, she dumps it like nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
After 4 episodes, yeah, she never talks about it again.
Right. And not only that, but it was like it was just so weird to have like this bike that's almost considered a character, like early on, and then to just see it sort of dumped because understandably, if she wants to keep pursuing this career or this this hobby, she's going to need to have a better bike.
Mm-hmm.
It feels weird to me that we just didn't start with the road bike. Why did we need to start with Pontoon in the first place?
I mean, I think the only reason would be if the goal of the show is to help Japanese women realize that they too can ride bikes, that folding bikes are an option that are a little less intimidating than a road bike. But I'm not really sure that's what it was for. It doesn't really feel targeted towards women. It feels targeted towards men.
Right. It kind of feels targeted towards that same group of men, who just want to watch cute girls do cute things.
Exactly.
It's very unintimidating. Like, none of the girls are they're not terribly complicated.
No.
They just sort of fit a very specific niche. And,
and you can pick your favorite.
Yeah, you can just kind of pick your favorite. There's no judgment there. And that's kind of what the series is. It's a series without judgment. And that is a tough thing to pull off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to actually keep it compelling. Very few series can do that. And
can you name one?
No.
Okay.
I was trying to think, like, if I put on the spot, no, I can't think of one. If I had some time, maybe I could think of something. But
yeah. Fair enough. You can tell we prepared really well for this podcast.
Yeah.
We prepared about as well for this podcast as Long Rider's staff prepared to make an anime.
Yeah, essentially. That's a great point.
So do you want to wrap up and just say, like, what sticks out if a year from now you're gonna be thinking back on Long Riders, what's gonna stick with you from that show?
I honestly am concerned I'm not gonna remember this series after we're done recording.
I would be delighted to evacuate it from my memory as well.
I feel like Long Riders is going to be one of those series that, like, 2 years down the lines, somebody is going to bring it up. I'm like, have I seen that series? And I maybe, like, check some, like, art. It's like, this looks familiar.
Well, yeah, and then you'll remember, oh my gosh, I reviewed that week to week for 3 months.
Right. Like, because there is nothing that's like... This is a series that's not... This is a series that's almost designed to be forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's cheap. It's candy.
It's cheap. It's there to make a quick profit off of a select group of nerds. Sorry, yeah. I mean, we're nerds too. That's not meant to be judgment.
Yeah.
It's meant to... And then, you just quickly move on to the next thing. You buy maybe the Blu-rays, maybe you find like a sticker, you find like a statue or two or a figure or two, you throw it in your closet, you forget about it, and then when you're moving one day, you pull it out, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this series. And then toss it right back in the box.
Yeah. I do have to say the one thing I'm really looking forward to is deleting the Daisuke app off my phone.
Matt, we do not need to keep trashing Daisuke.
It's a bad app, Matt. It's a bad app.
I know it is.
But anyway, so I just love the fact that we downloaded the Daisuke app specifically to watch Long Riders.
Like, we have to be some of the only people who did that.
Oh yeah, I know. Who's like an exclusive diehard Long Riders watcher.
Now, on Anime's News Network, for their voting of Anime of the Year, they had 12 people vote for Long Riders. So if you are watching now, I do apologize.
Yeah, we were not one of those 12 fans.
Who watched? We were probably those must be the only other people who have actually sat through and watched the show.
I know, right?
Like outside of us, and I feel really bad because we have to be some of the only people who are putting out something on Long Riders.
Yeah,
and we didn't. We're sorry not to be contributing to the positivity here, guys, but it's not a good show.
There's nothing positive to say. Avoid it like the plague, if you can even find it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because this is a show that is going to be lost to history, I think.
I don't know. I mean, it did actually get licensed.
Right. And there's a sick part of me that wants the Blu-rays. Because there's almost a part of me that just wants to see it keep surviving somehow. Like, maybe long into the future, Long Riders is going to be one of those, like big collector's items, or probably not. But I want somebody down the line to, like, I don't know, somebody who's doing a review show down the line of really old and strange anime to go through have like a garage sale one day and have somebody dig through my junk and be like, huh, that's interesting. And then we'll see a review for it like that, like gets like decently popular down the line in, like, I don't know, 10 years.
10. I mean, anyway. Who knows? I think that this is a forgettable show that will be forgotten as soon as we finish this episode. So, I think we've wrapped up several times, but I do appreciate your time, Matt. I do appreciate you surviving Long Riders with me these last several months. I think we're gonna cut to the credits, and I will check in with you next week as we continue our quest to watch every sports anime that's currently airing, and thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, Matt.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is kosiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.